meetings. Go for it. Okay, let's call the policy committee meeting to order at 6:32. So we have a bunch of policies to go over, and I just want to preface by saying that there are lots of changes from Hartford coming up. So be prepared to see policies again and again and again, and ones that we just did again. We're going to start with policies for rescission. Policy 9540.11, news media service at meetings. If you look at your policy notes from Shipman and Goodwin, they say that bylaw is not required and they recommend to repeal. If we wish to retain it, they recommend further legal review to ensure compliance with FOIA. And if we wish to develop rules about recordings of meetings by news media and others, then it should be prescribed, must be prescribed by board rule in advance of the meeting and can be done through the bylaw. So they recommend rescind. I agree. Is there any discussion? Maureen? Maureen, are you with us? I think you're muted.
She stepped up.
Sorry, I'm having some technical difficulties. I would just love to hear from Craig and Seth and Galen about what has happened in the past as far as this. Do we need to have some rules?
I think what this really speaks to is, how it would work normally. I haven't seen this policy in other places, and it really just explains how we would normally act. I mean, obviously the press is invited, they're open meetings. Typically now they do not attend, but they will contact either Zoe or myself, on an important topic, or Seth about that, to get a comment or a heads up on something. But a lot of times, if we want something in the press, we need to do a press release. They just don't have the same number of reporters or coverage that they used to. So I agree with Diane. It's not needed.
Okay, I understand.
Our normal bylaws that include meetings is public meetings, so anyone is allowed to attend. We cannot restrict or tell the media that they cannot come. So it's kind of like a moot point to have this meeting. Yeah.
Okay.
Zoom been recorded here.
Right.
I understand. Thank you. I agree. Thank you.
All right, so if we're on agreement that we will rescind this, we will forward it to the Board of Ed to rescind. All right, the next policy is 9900 school board legislative program. The bylaw is not required and Shipman and Goodwin recommend repeal. The board is legally bound to comply with federal and state law and changes in the law, but it does not need a policy so reflecting. If we wish to designate a member to stay abreast of legislative changes, it may do so without this bylaw in place. They recommend rescind. I agree. Comments, questions?
That does happen. I know the last 2 years Seth has represented the board at the Cape Legislative Delegate Assembly, before the conference. So I know that happens regularly. It's typically the board chair that goes to those. So I think we're covered.
Plus, we're always updated by Shipman and Goodwin.
Right. Yeah, right.
And Zoe.
Yes.
So are we all in agreement to forward this to the Board of Ed with a recommendation of rescind?
Yes, it is definitely
Maureen?
redundant.
I'm sorry. Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right. The next policy is policy 9910, state legislative program. The bylaw is not required. They recommend repeal. It's really not needed. Is there any comments or questions regarding this policy? I agree with the recommendation to rescind.
I agree as well, although we can invite our state rep a little more often. To give us the direction, scoop.
Sure.
Yeah, we used to do that once a year. We could add that back onto the agenda. Have our delegation come give us an update. That's what we're trying to do.
Find a good month for it.
Right.
Not
Yeah.
during budget season,
Yeah,
maybe.
exactly. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Maureen, are you in agreement with that?
Yes, I agree. Thank you.
Okay, so we're all in agreement to forward This for rescission 9910. Next policy is 5120.9.4 bicycle and rollerblade use. Shipman and Goodwin say the policy is not mandatory. They recommend repeal. The use of rollerblades is outdated and likely inapplicable. Further, bicycle riding concerns the day-to-day operation of the school and is thus more appropriately included in a regulation or school procedure. They recommend the board consider making this a regulation and combining it with 5120.9.5. And there's a note from Zoe saying it is included in student handbooks and varies from building to building. And examples were included in your packet. You'll see an example from Polson and an example from Brown. And I just wanted to make a comment that if you read under the bicycles section under Polson and then you read it under Brown, you will find that they do not say the same thing. They say that the law requires a helmet under the age of 15 at Polson, and at Brown it says under the age of 14. So I think that we should probably find out exactly what that should be and correct it.
Absolutely.
I agree with that.
Also, in the Polson one, it says all bicycles must be parked in these racks and locked with the student's own lock. And then under Brown, it says all bicycles must be parked and locked in these racks. I'm assuming it's the same, that the student is the one who provides the lock. Just, it would be nice if they were sort of the same. So I don't know what, Han says, but as a complete aside, it would probably be nice to see the school handbooks, like for the board to be able to see them.
We did see those.
They were being updated, like way back. That was like way back.
Okay.
Previous board.
Right.
And then they were in the process of being updated when Craig first came on, and then I don't know that we ever saw the finished products. And I think it would be like a nice thing to
Can you catch me up on the use of motorized?
So what you're remembering
Yeah.
from the spring was when I brought you all of the code of conducts, which went through a massive overhaul.
Right.
The handbooks then had some changes that reflected what was changed in the code of conduct, and there have been some changes in the handbooks as we've shifted building configurations, and we're also, so they've done a couple of minor changes. We'll probably do a minor one again for next year to make it current, and then again prepare for a major overhaul of
Right.
all of them as we shift again. It just makes the work more manageable, and with changes that happen constantly at the state level, like
Right.
you're always doing these big changes, so the big structural one kind of comes at a good time when we're shifting everything else already. We bring you the code of conducts when we do the big overhauls. When you would have last been brought the handbooks predates when I was doing this part.
it's been a long time.
Yeah, so
Because there was we had discussed previously the dress code policy.
Mhm.
And that's when we looked at the handbooks separately, and they were very different because they are targeting very different age groups.
Yeah.
But there was some discussion about getting them more in alignment, not only with the board policy, but with each other as appropriate. And that was the previous board.
Right, but it sounds as if it would be better to wait until
To
everything
wait,
gets
yeah.
settled and all the redistricting is done.
Yeah.
So,
And that's something where we could bring them to, same way you didn't vote on code of conduct, but
Right.
brought to you.
It's just like an FYI.
And FYI, no reason why we can't do that again, because I know the changes for the handbooks, at least that I gave the administrators this year, it's their updated list of policies. And throughout the year, if there's one that rescinded and it's immediate to go in and do that. And then also any noticing requirements that change year to year, based on what Shipman tells me what has to go in a handbook, that's automatically updated, and that language is mirrored across all of them.
Okay.
Because that's the legally required, it must look like this, don't go this wrong.
Okay.
But we can make a note to bring those to you and then FYI.
Thank you. I know this is regulation level and not policy. But could we consider adopting a rule that mandates that students riding bicycles on school property during school hours have to wear helmets?
So, I just looked up and I saw it multiple different places, so I do wanna triple check this later, but, it looks like in Connecticut it's 16 and under, so neither of those. factors.
Yeah, that's what I thought when I saw it, because I was trying to remember.
And,
That was my daughter.
I'm trying to think if we even have bike racks at Dingley. I don't
know where they're.
Yeah, I know we do with Polson and I know we do with Brown. I have not seen anybody we don't have the most bike friendly schools
Yeah.
locations, you know, in
Yeah.
terms of that, so it's, I
They're
know.
not even car friendly.
So Brown School, you do see quite often kids ride from the back neighborhood through the path. But you know, even, you know, Polson, I don't see it too often. But yeah, I think we should update it to be at 16, and then I think beyond that, I really don't think we have kids riding bikes at school.
I mean, that's it. I'm thinking of it,
Yeah.
not only for student safety, obviously, first and foremost, but also from a liability perspective. You know, I mean, should we challenge Shipman if we can mandate helmets for any student?
I mean, I
At
think,
least, I mean, kids are gonna ride on our property, you know, on weekends and all that, and we can't really seem to control that, but during school hours.
right, but kids are riding there before school hours to get to school. And I
Yeah,
think-
or on the way to and from school.
Right,
or
but I
during
think
school
that
hours.
that would be a difficult thing to enforce when it's not mandated by law. And then it's like another thing to like who's gonna be responsible for enforcing that. And I think at the high school level, and we could ask certainly TJ how many how many students actually bike to school, because it seems to me that most people at the high school level are either driven by a parent or a family member or an older sibling who's driving to school, or they're driving themselves. Or they're riding the bus. So I don't know that it would be worthwhile to pursue if you're talking about like one or two students, and difficult to enforce when it's not,
And then you have the
Right.
problem where if we create a standard and we don't enforce it, then are we liable
right.
for someone who's not wearing one to, you know?
I agree that it's gonna be difficult to enforce, but I would love to see that as part of our policy. Because I have a daughter who had a very serious ski accident and she was wearing a helmet. And that's always one of the first questions is, was she wearing a helmet? Because she has a brain injury as a result of that. And the helmet saved her life. So I think even if it is just one or two students that feel like, oh gosh, this is part of the policy, I have to wear my helmet. It's worth taking that position, I think.
I think that would be something that we would have to ask Andrew about.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'd be hard to enforce. I think we updated it to be 16, which is the state law. But typically administrators or staff are not outside. So you're talking 17, 18-year-olds. So the high school kids are not outside when they're coming in the morning.
And
So
they're driving, really.
yeah.
It may not be as big of an issue at the high school for all the reasons you've cited, but. Kids aren't generally riding bikes, and certainly when they get to driving age, they're more often riding with friends in their cars or driving themselves. And again, the school, that campus is not conducive to neighborhood sidewalk.
I don't think I've
bike
seen a bike
riding.
there at all in the past. few
Yeah.
years.
But again, like Brown and Polson,
So I think we would, I think we'd say students under 16 are required by law to wear a helmet.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think we cover that just by moving up the
Yeah.
age.
okay.
Okay, I'm
By
comfortable with that.
saying it's
Thank you.
required by law is not taking ownership to the point where we're creating a standard that we then have to enforce.
And again, this is not gonna be a policy, that's an administrative regulation or it's under administrative rule.
Yeah,
So
I
this
agree with that.
particular-
Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Maureen. So the bicycle and rollerblade use policy 5120.9.4, I'm in agreement with Shipman and Goodwin to rescind. Is there any discussion or do we agree that we should forward this to the board for rescission? Galen,
I agree.
Maureen,
you're muted, Maureen.
I agree. Thank you.
Thank you.
okay, great. Okay, so then the last policy for rescission tonight is policy 5120.4.2.3, substance abuse counseling. Shipman and Goodwin recommend repealing the policy and replacing it with a model policy, drug and alcohol use by students. which includes the language concerning counseling and support for students with substance abuse problems, and this model policy was adopted in April 2022. So is there any discussion? I agree with the recommendation to rescind. Alan?
Yeah, I agree in general. I don't actually recall the new model policy, but if it covers it, it covers it.
It definitely
So,
covers it. I forget now what the number is. Do you know the number offhand? So,
Doesn't really matter. I'm sure it covers it.
I agree also. Thank you.
It's in the 5,000s.
thank you, Maureen. All right, so then we'll move that forward to the board for rescission. Okay, so now we're moving on to policies for review for rescind and replace. And the first policy is the bylaw 9510, time, place, and notice of meetings. So the current policy is number 9510, regular board meetings. And we also have policy 9520, special board meetings. And policy 9540.1, notification of board meetings. So these three policies will be rolled into the new 9510 revised policy called time, place, and notice of meetings. And I just want to note that under regular meetings, item B, where it says in compliance with the Connecticut general statutes, the chairperson, and then in brackets, or secretary. I just want to know what we do. Do we leave in the or secretary? Do we take that out? What is our process?
You can leave it in, it's whatever you prefer. I do it.
You do it.
No members of the board.
You do it as a designee, basically as a designee on behalf of the chair or secretary.
Yeah, I take care of it.
All right, so-
Any of your noticing, the word refers to the board secretary, you don't do any of your noticing yourself, I do it.
So should
It's
we
whatever
leave in,
language you'd like to have.
I'm just asking, should we leave in the wording then, the chairperson or
I
secretary?
don't think you need a secretary.
We can take out word secretary, but I would put or designee because that complies with what we're doing now. Yeah.
All right, so we'll change secretary to designee
Sure.
and take out the brackets. So we'll read in compliance with the Connecticut general statutes, the chairperson or designee, or should it be the chairperson's designee? That's typically how we state things
Yeah.
now,
And it
or
should,
chairpersons,
yeah,
designee.
chairpersons. That's-
Shall file this calendar with town clerk and post this calendar on the board's internet website on or before January 31st. And then if you go to, excuse me, the next page on number 64, line 64, we should remove the regional school district option line because we are not a regional school district. So that just needs to be removed. And that's it for that. So is there any discussion about time, place, and notice of meetings, policy 9510? And this will be repealing or rescinding the current 9510, the 9520, and the 9540.1, and replacing all of those with the new 9510 time, place, and notice of meetings. Any discussion, comments, questions? Galen?
It's clean up. I like it.
Maureen?
I like it too. Thank you.
Great, so then,
And we learned at the Cape conference that actually some of the notice requirements for some of the school board meetings are under the school board section of the statutes under Title 10 rather than actually found in FOIA, but they equally apply. So just an interesting aside.
thank you. Okay, moving on. Policy 5090.8.1, search and seizure. And the associated administrative regulation regarding search and seizure. And we have our current policy, which is in your, and the current regulation is also in your packet. So first, let's discuss the policy and not the regulation. And if you look on the new policy 5090.8.1, search and seizure, if you look under on the line 26, where there's a change, it says or is violating either the law, board policy, or the rules of the school. So when I looked at the old policy and the wording of it, I'd like the addition of administrative regulation. So it would then say. Suspecting that the search will reveal evidence that the student has violated or is violating either the law or policy. Administrative regulations or rules of the school. Do we like that addition or no? Do you think it needs to say that, or just because it said it before, it's very, cumbersome and verbose, but it covers like absolutely everything? Or do we not need the administrative regulation because it's a rule of the school?
In other Shipman model policies, they seem to imply that when you say board policy, violating any component of the regulation is inherent in that means you violated policy. They see it as all encompassing, saying board policy covers both components.
Okay,
In other,
because
I
board
can
policy says that there can
it's
be
the board
administrative
and the
regulations.
correct.
Okay.
I can certainly type it out if you prefer, but typically Shipman just says board policy.
Dr. Cook, what do you think?
I think that's inherited there, yeah. board
Okay,
policy.
so we don't need the administrative regulation part, okay. So then it reads as it states, as it's changed, either the law, board policy, or the rules of the school. Right, so that was the only thing that I was commenting on for the policy, the new revised policy. And then in the regulation, the new revised regulation, it on line 18. So it's the exact same thing, except for it says will produce evidence that the student has violated or is violating either the law, and then I would add in board policy or the rules of the school. It doesn't actually say board policy there.
Yeah.
Are we in agreement with that?
Yes,
You like that, Dr. Cook?
I do.
You go with that, Maureen?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so now the next change on this is gonna be a fun discussion. Look at line 39 and 40. So the statement is, during such searches, a member of the school staff shall be present at all times as a witness, and both the police officer conducting the search and the witness shall be of the same sex as the student searched. So my question is, should it say the same biological sex or
Perhaps,
biological sex identified at birth?
or perhaps match pronouns.
Like what, I'm thinking that the intent here is to make the student comfortable with the same sex and body type as that they have. And in that intent then, do we say biological sex?
They probably feel more comfortable with a member of their identified sex than their biological sex, I would imagine.
I would agree with that.
I don't know. I don't know that we can we say that? Can you speak for someone? Do we say of their choice? I don't know. You see how it's kind of a
Yes, yeah,
It is a-
it's sticky.
it is.
I think it's very difficult for us to define that.
But if we're gonna have it in the policy, because it's meant to protect the student and
Right.
their comfort level, then we have to find the right wording here. Do we let them choose? Do we say it's their same biological sex? Do we say it's the same sex that they identify with? I don't think that you can speak for each person as to what their comfort level is.
I agree with that also. It's hard.
It is, so, I don't know.
Problem is, a student, I mean, practically speaking, a student that's being asked to be strip searched is likely to throw up an objection and say, I don't feel comfortable with anyone.
Right.
It's also true.
Um,
So we can do a couple of things. We can kick it back to Shipman and Goodwin and ask their advice about how to approach this in the best manner. And see if they have come across this somewhere else where they have a different way of wording it.
I
Yes,
think I would go that route.
I think that's the best,
I think we have to.
I'm sorry, Maureen, I didn't hear what you said.
I would go that route. I'd ask Shipman and Goodwin what to do about that. Because I'm sure this has come up and we just don't know.
You know, and the question is really, what is the purpose of the school witness being there? Is it to ensure the sanctity of any evidence that's obtained from that search, or is it
I don't
to
think so.
protect the interests of the student in not having, like a
I think
search
it's-
unreasonably conducted?
I think it is a protection on both sides. It protects the person who is doing the search
Yeah,
from
from
suggestions-
claims that,
claims
yeah.
of inappropriate behavior.
Yeah.
And it protects the person being searched against any inappropriate behavior, so I think it protects in both directions. And I also kind of question that, like, because, who is going to be that school staff member that does that? Is it like the nurse? Is it like?
if the nurse is female and the search is of a male, then it can't, or vice versa. If, depending on how we end up working.
So let's just get this back to shipment of the bed.
I agree, I think that's a, good path.
And then the other change on this that I was looking at was if you go to the next page, and it's pretty much the same thing as I had said before. It's under letter D, and it talks about the school regulations. It says the students use any item, the possession of which is illegal or in violation of school regulations. Should it also say board policy or school rules? That would be my question, if it would be all three of those things, or just board policy and school regulations. I'm not really sure. Because board policy covers school regulations, so you could get rid of school regulations and say board policy, or you could say board policy and school rules, like it said before. Thoughts?
Yeah, stay consistent, I would say, for policy and school rules.
Okay. And then if you go down to line 74, it's the same thing, where it says, or that the locker contains items, the possession of which is illegal or in violation of board policy and school rules. And get rid of school regulations. Board policy or school rules. Or that endangers the health, safety, or welfare. Are we in agreement with that change?
Yes.
Maureen? I don't know where to
Yes,
look for
thank
you,
you.
Maureen. Okay.
Thank you.
I'm just sort of gazing at
It's
this
never
board.
easy when you're on Zoom. I
I
apologize.
know.
And we do pass these back on to shipment, because oftentimes I think what happens is, multiple attorneys work on different policies and things like that.
Sure.
So, I know sometimes they've accepted our suggestions, and other times they have a different reason why, but.
And then on the back of this page is the administrative regulation regarding search and seizure. And it says this is an optional addendum regarding the use of breathalyzers on school property. And so I know this is something that I have brought up a few times based on past policies. So I'm assuming then that this is a regulation that you wish to keep, Dr. Cook?
Correct.
Okay. And so this is the new regulation as it's written.
Yes.
It's quite detailed.
Yeah.
I do have a question on it.
Yes.
What constitutes training? So it says, for instance, on line 144, testing will be conducted by trained personnel in a separate area whenever possible. So is there formal training, and if they're not trained, would that invalidate the results of the breathalyzer?
I know our administration has done this, so I imagine they have training from the company that does that, and also the officers are there.
I mean, the police department, yes, right, but I mean, as long
Because
as
there's actually two devices that they talk about. They talk about the PAS, or the passive alcohol sensor, and then if that indicates a positive, then they do the breathalyzer. So you're talking about two different sensors, two different ways of testing. And so then I wonder then it says will be only designated school personnel will be trained in the use of the PAS device and or breathalyzer.
it's on a
test.
paper trail that they were trained, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yes, right, okay.
I'm assuming that the principals are probably trained, because I mean, this is something that comes up at hand whenever there's a dance or, yes. And so my question is, because I really don't know, does the PAS device and or breathalyzer differentiate between diabetic ketoacidosis
Yeah.
and do they? Do you know?
No,
Oh, you don't know.
I had the same question.
Did ya?
But
God, it was a
someone's
good question.
ketoacidosis, they show up at school with that. They're probably gonna call them in.
I've also heard, and I don't know if it's true, that if you do an albuterol inhaler right before you do a breathalyzer, it can also skew the results.
False
They
positive or-
require, they also
As a
require
false
15
positive or as
minutes,
a mass?
15-minute.
I think it's a false positive.
Okay.
But I don't really know the mechanism there because they're very different substances. But I have heard that, and I don't know if it's just like a, tall tale.
We'll check on the training and.
Yeah, there's nothing that talks about the amount of time that needs to elapse between the PAS and the breathalyzer. Yes, because that's a reasonable amount of time, like a 15-minute interval. I think our old one, I think, said a 15-minute interval.
Just because if you look at, line 155 where it talks about reasonable suspicion shall include, all of these, well, except for the first one, but the 2, 3, and 4, those are things that you can definitely get with diabetic ketoacidosis. Anyway,
The
now,
other thing is, it talks about this, on line 130, all testing instruments shall be properly calibrated and will be checked for accuracy and for full calibration in accordance with manufacturer standards. Are we keeping?
right, so like, do we have like a little
Right.
cabinet where there's a checkoff sheet, like this was
Yeah.
examined, it was checked, it was calibrated,
What date,
right?
yeah, and who did it?
And then is that something that like our school resource officers do, or is it?
Yeah, they're always present.
I mean, they would have their own.
They have their own.
They use our tools, yeah.
They use our tools?
Yes.
Okay, okay.
All right, so anyway. So we're gonna take this, so this is a regulation, so, that we're talking about, so that's gonna go back, we wouldn't vote on this anyway, but we're discussing that, so that regulation will go back to Shipman and Goodwin with those questions, and, but the policy, 5090.8.1 search and seizure, we made a couple of changes, no, we didn't change on 26, so it stays the same as the revised. So as it stands now in the revised policy 5090.8.1 search and seizure, do we all agree that we can forward this to the board for voting to rescind and replace? And that would be replacing 9510 regular board meetings, 9520 special board meetings, 9540.1 notification of board meetings with the new, oops, sorry, wrong one.
We did that one.
I'm sorry.
That's it.
5090.8.1
Can I
search and
make
seizure.
breathalyzer? Sorry.
Yeah, right. You don't know what I'm drinking over here. Okay, so as the revised policy stands for 5090.8.1 search and seizure, are we okay with forwarding this to the board to recommend rescind and replace?
I vote yes.
Thank you.
Aye.
Maureen?
Yes, thank you.
Great.
I'm sorry.
Yes,
I know you're moving quickly and you like to move fast and you're really
I
good at
do
it.
like to move
And
back.
it helps us
You
tremendously
like to
get through
drag
all
me
this
down.
stuff.
Zach.
I'm not trying to drag it down, but I recall from my reading of our current policy that it's hard to, there's like several pages of this. that's
Which
thick.
policy are you referring to?
The search and seizure policy with regard to PAS and breathalyzer. There were specific rules regarding that I don't see in the recommended new policy.
You're talking about the regulation or the policy?
The regulation, I don't see the new regulation. It has to do with the circumstances of announcing generally to students that a PAS may be in use. Or a breathalyzer may be in use. I know that, I've seen, especially the high school level, I've seen. Notices for events go out that remind students that, we're trying to maintain our decorum here and all
Right.
school rules apply and, please note there may be breathalyzers. Or passive, whatever, at the event, like kind of a warning, and I don't see that in the new Shipman and Goodwin, regulation version, but I'm wondering if not having that warning, I know we're doing it anyway as a matter of course, but if we remove an affirmative requirement from the regs or the policy. Are we setting up for some principal down the road saying, well, I don't need to warn anybody, and then using it and then everyone getting up in arms.
Well, I see under, in the regulation, in the new regulation. Under letter B, extracurricular voluntary school sponsored events, it does say, the board allows for use of blah, 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 blah. And at the bottom, it says, students will be notified through a variety of means, including orientation programs, student handbooks, and or electronic publication.
Right, and.
But that's just under the B extracurricular volunteer school.
Right, and it does say. Such suspicionless testing will occur only if students are notified prior to the event. That a PAS or breathalyzer may be used. This is on the recommended policy lines 172 to 174. The shipment's new. This is the.
Yeah. under the-
I just couldn't find it, but it's there.
It's under extracurricular voluntary school.
Such
sponsored events.
suspicionless testing will occur only if student, okay, I didn't see it, but it is there. Okay, good. Sorry, I was trying to go fast and I couldn't skim that much that quickly.
But I mean, it only says it under the extracurricular voluntary school sponsored events, and is that what you are concerned about?
No.
Did you want something under,
No, because the rules for when they're in school, I think are clear, and that, yeah, and that's inherent. That if they're acting with suspicion, then they can be tested. I think that's clear enough. And that's all also in our handbooks and everything.
okay,
This is regarding extracurricular and voluntary events.
all right, so the policy is
Okay,
gonna
so
move
it's there.
forward, the regulation is going back to Shipman and Goodwin. Unless you want to wait on the policy until the regulation is ready, it doesn't matter to me either way. Does it matter though?
I don't think you need to, because we can update the regulation pretty quickly.
Yeah, so we can move the policy forward to next board meeting and bring the reg back just for your, as an FYI at the next policy meeting.
Okay, good. Okay, now we get to the fun one. Student dress code. Always a fun one. I think I've seen this in my short time on the board, like 3 times at least,
Wow.
maybe 4 times. In 4 years. Okay, so, the student dress code policy 5090.3.1. Shipman and Goodwin recommend the revision because although we updated our policy to their version of model policy, the Crown Act was passed by the legislature in the spring of 2021 and prohibits discrimination based on protected hairstyles. And so the current model policy includes recent updates. And so you will see under lines 10 to 16, the new language that reflects the new law. And so the other thing that I wanted to point out was that I made some changes. If you go down to line 34, you'll see, this was like, I don't know if you remember, Galen, it was a previous board, how many times that we discussed these particular changes, but so line 34 says, this is what is prohibited. Shirts and or blouses that reveal the abdomen, comma, chest, or undergarments. And I think that's what we were trying to say. And then the next line is see-through clothing. And then the next line is shorts, mini skirts, or pants that reveal undergarments. So I think the appropriate punctuation has been used to convey the correct message. Does anyone have any comments or questions regarding the changes that you see on 5090.3.1 student dress?
Okay, I
Yes.
do have a question regarding hoodies. Do we allow students to wear hoodies in class?
The wear hoodies, but not with the hood up.
Not with the hood up, obviously, right,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
okay. So, okay, good. So, all right, so basically it's, you can't wear a hat with a brim or a, you know, more or less.
Yeah, no hats at all, not
Right.
even like.
Right.
Like,
You
I
can't
know
have
that you
belts.
can't wear a beret, you
Right.
know, they will make you, some teachers make you remove it, some don't, technically it's a head covering.
So on line 34,
Yes,
shirts and or blouses that reveal the abdomen, chest, or undergarments. This is a sensitive area, especially for young ladies, because you could be wearing a completely covering shirt that in all respects covers, but if the neck slides to one side, you can see a bra strap. You know, and my daughter was actually given a detention for that once.
Are you kidding me?
And now they feel,
Seriously?
I'm being perfectly
And
honest.
did she serve the?
And my daughter is very, like, you know, she dresses very
Right.
conservatively.
Yes.
She doesn't want anything to be seen. And, you know,
They
it's literally the
seriously
shirt
gave
shifted
her-
a bit. She was walking down the hall and she got a detention. So, you know, is it, you know.
Wow, I would not have let my daughter serve the detention if I were you, but that's just me.
Well,
The problem is there's always judgment, discretion.
and in my opinion,
You can't regulate it down to the T.
Right,
yeah, I mean, I think the intent is that it be, that it's purposely making undergarments visible, you know,
the intent is that you should not wear something that is deemed disruptive.
yes,
To the
to the educational
right.
process, exactly.
But I think, to be perfectly honest, I think most teachers do not even wanna go there. Is
Well,
my
I think it was
understanding.
the very beginning of the school year, and there was definitely. Like an announcement that we're gonna be enforcing, you know, school dress code. And she was walking down the hall, not in class, and a new teacher. Grabbed her and said, "You."
Wow,
Yeah, so, and it.
well, I don't think,
mortified her
yeah,
as
that's
well.
not the intent.
I know, so the reason I raise it is not that we necessarily need to wordsmith this,
Okay,
because
got it.
but it's instructive, I
Yeah.
think, for the administration to take note that maybe there's a reasonable way of enforcing that doesn't have kind of ridiculous consequences.
I'm really surprised by that, to be perfectly honest, because it's my understanding that most teachers, like, they don't even wanna go there, they don't even wanna deal with that unless it's something that is so outrageous.
I think that's been my experience too. They typically turn it over to administration to deal with because they don't wanna. And we actually in this scenario are okay with that because of it brings more consistency to it. Like, you know, you have 80 teachers versus 3 administrators
Right.
implementing a policy. It's gonna be more consistent if you have the 3 administrators, and it's a really difficult situation, you know.
Yeah, it is.
So,
And very subjective
Yeah.
as well. So I mean, I don't even like the wording of this, even when it came up like 4 years ago, and 3 years ago, and 2 years ago. But I think it's the best that we can do, but I just changed it a little bit to make it more obvious that what we're trying to prevent is like the showing of inappropriate things in undergarments, yeah.
Yeah.
But I do have questions, but
It
you know,
distracts
I
from
know,
the educational process.
I know that we've talked about it before and it's not really covered by this because this talks about the student dress code during the academic school day. So my question is, what is the dress code for after the school day during athletic team sports? Because I know there have been some instances where some of the girls wanted to wear just sports bras and were told they had to wear shirts, and then they complained when the boys are allowed to take their shirts off and run, and it's not fair. And I say, everyone just keep your clothes on. So I don't know if there's like an athletic, I actually tried to look up in the athletic, you know, manual policy, whatever, student athletic handbook. And I didn't really see anything, but I didn't go through the whole thing with a fine tooth comb like I usually do.
Yeah,
But perhaps it could be addressed there.
right. I'll have to look into that. I know that is the common refrain, cross country.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, in my opinion, when you are practicing a sport, you are still representing your school, no matter where you are. Whether you're in a game or you're in practice, and so just keep your clothes on.
So you have to wear a shirt with a logo, and that segues into the next.
I was just shooting.
But I mean, you know, a sports bra is an undergarment in a way,
And
although it's,
Sometimes too, I've had, you know, this experience, so cross country boys are running and it's not a sanctioned practice, it's just they got together in late August, getting ready for the season, they're running. And I've gotten those calls before, or at the girls, yeah, like that, so.
I don't know, don't people have better things to do? Anyway, something to think about for the AD, not for me.
Right, something at the regulation level.
Yeah, that's not a policy level. All right, so we're at 5090.3.1 student dress, what? What?
I don't think we should skip too quickly over this, but I know that right now the style is to wear extremely short skirts.
Yes.
And, you know, like, what's the touch point for, or the touchstone for enforcing, you know, whether undergarments are visible or not?
If you see it, it's visible. I don't know what to tell you.
Well, and then you run into, you know, a male teacher, you know, seeing something and reporting it, and next thing you know, that male teacher's in hot water or something, you know what I mean?
I agree.
And there are instances in the past where, you know, especially young ladies, they'll go to school wearing what their parents put them in. They get to school, they take some clothes off or rearrange their clothes. It happens at Polson and it happens at the high school. So, you know, I'm not trying to be accusatory and I'm not trying to, you know, bring any kind of criticism. I'm just trying to lend experience to a review of this policy.
I mean, I think, you know, this is what came up probably, I want to say 4 years ago. And the policy is sort of basic. And then you go to the student handbooks and they are different. They still cover the board policy, but they are much more specific. And if I recall, way back when, I think it was like Polson, it was actually like the skirt was supposed to be to the length of your hand, you know, like with your arm down. Like there was much, and I don't know, that's what I was saying before about the handbooks, like I'm curious.
There were a certain number of inches to the knee or something like that.
Right, and it was different from school to school. And so that's why I think this is such a very basic policy. And then the school handbooks take it from there and can expand upon it at their discretion at whatever is appropriate for that age level.
But do they, or do they keep it general? And then the schools and the administrators and the teachers are subjected to an objective test and to claims that, oh, you know, my skirt isn't as short as Sally's and I
Well, I
got
think
in
that's
trouble.
it's always that way.
Yeah.
I mean, it's always gonna be subjective and it's always, you know, and there was also, I remember, and I don't know if it was actually written in the handbook, it was like, you know, if you went to reach to your locker, if your shirt came up, you know, then it was too short. So I think that goes to the handbooks. I think we have basic policy and then the student handbooks per school by the administration, it's more of a regulation and leave it at that level because I think that is more appropriate to each age group. I don't think that you need to be telling kindergartners, you know, like.
Yeah.
No short skirts.
Yeah.
I think they might still be wearing ruffled underwear, so. Just saying, anyway, so with regard to policy 5090.3.1 student dress, are we as our committee good with forwarding this with the changes made toward the board? Is Maureen gone?
She had fallen off and she's trying to get back on and
tech
she's
problem?
been unable to.
Well, we still have quorum, so
The internet is out.
I'm fine with it.
I'm good with it. When Maureen gets back on, she can weigh in. All right, so now we have to go to policy 5144.4. And this is physical activity, undirected play, and student discipline. And it is renamed to policy 5144.4 recess and play-based learning. If you look at your notes from Shipman and Goodwin, this is in direct response to Public Act number 23-159 and Public Act number 23-101 that adds new play-based learning requirements for preschool through 5th grade. Beginning with the 24-25 school year, each Board of Ed must provide for play-based learning during the instructional time of each regular school day for students in preschool and kindergarten. Teachers who instruct students in grades 1 to 5 must be permitted to utilize play-based learning during the instructional time of a regular school day. This policy has been revised to include these upcoming play-based learning requirements. The new law also includes a definition of recess, which has been incorporated throughout the policy, and there were minor technical revisions for clarity. And so the only thing that I saw with this policy, not to be nitpicky, is just some spacing issues, which I'm sure you see in your copy.
Yes, and sometimes that's just a product of when you're doing track changes, too
Okay.
much, it doesn't like it.
Yeah.
It looks nice once they accept them.
Okay. And I think just line 55. I just want to clarify what that says. It's 54, school employees may prevent or restrict a student from participating in the entire time, is it devoted to? Devoted to, okay, that's like that. Just got a little funky there. Devoted to recess. And there's a whole new section about recess, blah, 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 play-based learning. That was the only thing, was just the, that one technical thing. So, is there any comments or discussion regarding 5144.4, now called recess and play-based learning? Alan?
No, it's spelled out very clearly.
That's very, very clear policy. And Maureen's not back yet, so she can wait
I
when
just
she
want
comes
to ask
back.
Craig's opinion on it. If your opinion is, these requirements are beneficial to students that they, that means just in general.
I think so. I think that we do a good job of incorporating play-based learning into the, curriculum that we've read around with the years.
We've been doing that for years.
Right,
I mean,
yeah,
in
right.
the,
So
in the
question-
kindergarten.
Right.
Kindergarten, first grade level, I remember that very distinctly from when my daughter, that was a long time ago.
Yeah, I think the district's been ahead of the curve on that.
Yes.
For a long
And,
time.
and just for the peanut gallery, I want to point out that, a distinction is made between imposing discipline that, in advance of free play time, in recess, that prevents the student from participating in recess, not allowed. However, if the student is being disruptive and causing, potential harm to themselves or others on the recess playground or, during recess, that they can be removed from recess activities. So
I agree.
I think that's important.
They've been working on that language for a long time.
All right, moving on to policy 9710, school district logo and or motto. 9720, guidelines for use of district logo, board members' names. So there are two drafts. And you should have received a copy, 3 copies of the committee policies. And the reason that I did this and asked for it is because in the one version, draft 1 of policy, which we're changing from 9710 to 1200, moving it out of the bylaws section and into the community school relations section, school district logo and mascot. So it refers to policy 9450. And then in the other revised version, it refers to policy 9460. And the reason this is different is because if you look at our agenda for this evening for our general board of ed meeting, we are in the process of adopting the new bylaw 9450 committees, which incorporates the current policy 9450 board committees and the current policy 9460 advisory committees. So regardless of which draft that we decide, or if we combine them or whatever, we would actually have to change it to read 9450 committees, because that will be the new one, because it is a first read tonight. And then at the next board meeting, it'll be a second read and action item. So that's why these are included for your perusal. So keeping that in mind, when you read it, it's referring to the new, not yet adopted bylaw 9450 committees, which combines the special advisory committees and regular committees, standing committees into one policy.
So we can recommend that it be adopted, subject to the final wording that refers to the proper.
So considering we have 5 minutes to get through this, I don't think that we're gonna have a final decision on this tonight, and I think that's okay. Because we can wait for that policy to get through by the time this gets to committee again, and it'll be through. But I think we should just need to discuss the changes that are made here and go from there. We have 4 minutes. So, yes,
I'm sorry, just for the two policies beforehand, physical activity and student dress, she hasn't popped back on yet. Do you want to just let me know, are we okay to move those forward?
yeah, we have
Okay.
quorum, so
Okay.
we are
Thank
okay. Thank you. All right, so that was my first aside. So if you look at the differences between draft 1 and draft 2, draft 2 is very verbose. But the reason that I like draft 2 is because it is very specific about. The whole idea is that we obviously don't want to change the mascot or the logo very often, if at all, ever. But if indeed it comes up, then we have a policy in place. And it is not a reflection on the current AD or the current anything. It's about going forward with future boards and future directors, etc. And so I was trying to make a policy where there are very specific rules that you follow if you are going to, in fact, change the district logo or mascot. You would need, as you can read, the intent of the board is that it occurs infrequently. And if the board determines it to be no longer appropriate, then you would need a 2/3 affirmative vote of the membership of the board, of all 9 members, that the board will seek the advice of the superintendent when determining whether to change the logo or mascot. And if the board determines the need or desire to change the district logo or mascot, that they shall establish a committee, and this is where it would be read consistent with policy 9450, which would be the new policy 9450. To expedite and facilitate the board's decision, the board shall seek the advice of the superintendent before establishing or dissolving a committee. And such committee shall be established and dissolved by board vote, and the members of the committee shall be appointed by the board. And then it goes on to say that the committee shall be comprised of the chair of the Board of Ed, ex officio non-voting, the superintendent, ex officio non-voting, 1 or more board members, and representatives of stakeholders as the board deems appropriate. And with respect to changing the mascot, the athletic director shall be the chairperson non-voting of the committee. And then the board will establish the scope and schedule for the committee's work. The board retains the right to make the final determination of any logo and or mascot change, and the change will be approved by a 2/3 affirmative vote of the membership of the board. And so this is probably the only policy outside of bylaws that requires the 2/3 vote of the entire board, because we don't want politics or personal problems or anything to influence something this big, this drastic of a change. And then the last part is that minor changes or variations to the mascot, like temporarily changing the color to honor an awareness month, adding sport-specific icons, etc., will be at the discretion of the athletic director with approval from the superintendent, and that will allow for the specific sports logos to use the main logo, and add, tennis rackets or whatever, or to have, pink for breast awareness, whatever, and that we would not get involved in that because we don't want to be. Any thoughts, comments, questions?
Why is the athletic director the chair and a non-voting member of the committee?
That was my idea, because the way I look at it is that if the athletic director is like the head of like all of the sports, then if you're choosing, like, okay, you want a new mascot or mascot logo, all of the coaches have to report to him, like he's their boss. So I don't want anyone on the committee to feel beholden to the chair with their vote of saying, like, we're gonna vote the way they vote, because I want to be on their good side. If that person, he's gonna chair it, he's gonna run it, we'll get his opinion, his or her at the time opinion, but they won't vote. There are many times when a chair of a committee does not vote, is not a voting member, and there are times when they are.
On the school naming committee, we gathered as a committee and had a vote of the committee, like, people put their name into consideration to chair the committee. And then the committee itself, with the voting members of the committee, voted to select their own chair. And
So is the chair a voting member or non-voting?
yes,
Voting member.
yeah, still has the right to vote.
And how many are on the committee?
Like,
7
7 plus 2 non-voting members.
Yeah.
Step to myself, we're gonna vote.
So 7 includes the chair.
So
I just feel like it's nice to have, when something is gonna be possibly not an easy decision, that it might be better for the chair to direct the meeting and control the meeting without being like the tie-breaking vote.
why would they be the tie-breaking vote
I don't know,
necessarily?
it might be. It could be.
I mean, I see it both ways. I mean,
Well, that's why some committees have voting chairs and some have non-voting chairs. My suggestion is non-voting chair.
yeah, and I
Specifically
just feel like the athletic director has so much at stake and has the pulse of the athletic community in the within the regional community. And I kind of feel like they should have a vote and a say. And if they're influential, but you know, they could also be non-influential, you know, depending on the circumstances, so. And there's gonna be, you know, it looks like the intent is for the committee to include other stakeholders, like from the community and, you know, and not just coaches, for example. So it wouldn't be people under the director's thumb necessarily.
The way I look at it also is the risk of influence. Like, let's just say there's an AD who favors, oh, I don't know, let's say football. And then we'll always give money to the football team and give them the best practice times and give them everything that they want. And then on the committee, you've got parents that their kids are football players. And like, I don't want any sort of ability to sway based on prejudices or favoritism. And I'm certainly not saying that our current AG is like that, not at all. I'm trying to look at the worst possible scenario and try to make it as even keeled as possible. And I don't know if this does or not, but it's just my thought.
I mean, we've run out of time because we have to stick with our posted meeting times, but the other thing that I just want to draw attention to, put a thumbtack in it,
Yep,
is it looks like these rules that you're recommending here only apply to the adoption of a mascot and not a logo.
no, this is about the logo.
Okay,
In
it
your-
says with respect to changing the
To
mascot.
clarify, you mean athletic logo as well as the district logo. You
Yeah.
don't mean the you alone, you mean the athletic logo, and that's what I always understood it to be, I don't know.
When you're
That's
talking about, when you're talking about changing of a logo and or mascot. The logo refers to the school district logo and the mascot refers to the athletic mascot.
Yep.
I mean, we could say that.
Yeah,
make it more clear.
yeah, I think we can.
Yeah,
can work on it, yeah.
All right,
yeah.
all right, so we'll just come back to this, once again. And I just, is there any public comment?